Library of Babel is a short story written by Argentine author Jorge Luis Borges that was first published in his 1941 collection of short stories, El Jardín de Senderos que se bifurcan, or The Garden of Forking Paths. The story chronicles the tale of a series of men who find themselves trapped in a seemingly endless labyrinth, consisting of a seemingly infinite number of adjacent hexagonal-shaped rooms. Each room contained within it all of the bare necessities required for human survival, along with 4 walls equipped with towering bookcases, each filled with books exactly 410 pages long. The tomes, upon inspection, however, appear all to be filled with random gibberish, and rest in no apparent order. But the inhabitants of this strange and enigmatic reality come to the conclusion that, within the walls and pages of this hellish purgatory, must exist all useful and useless information that could be captured within their bounds. They theorized that the books contained within them every possible concatenation of alphabetical characters, including the use of spaces, commas, and periods. And thus, that everything discovered or undiscovered, everything that has ever or ever will be or never will be written, must exist there, somewhere amongst the gibberish. But what to do with this endless sea of almost entirely useless information, that though contains within it all possible knowledge, but that to search through is almost certainly a futility, even with all of eternity at your disposal? It is enough to drive a machine to madness. How, then, would a mere mortal cope? Well, let us take a look at how Borges's characters coped. Our narrator is a solitary man, as all those who walk the walls of the library seem to be. Not much is known about the narrator, including his name or identity, but we are told that in his youth, he went searching for, quote, the catalogue of catalogues, end quote, implying that the man has spent all, or at least most of his life trapped there. Some of the librarians, including the narrator, believed that since every conceivable book existed there, that somewhere, one of them must act as a precise index of all the other books in the library. They referred to this theoretical book as the catalogue of catalogues. Some, including the narrator, even believed in a kind of messiah, deemed the man of the book, or the bookman, who they imagined had, at some point, examined this mysterious cipher, and, as such, traveled fruitlessly through its countless chambers pursuing this deity. So desperate to find meaning were some, that cult-like behavior soon began to manifest amongst them. Enter the Purifiers. The Purifiers were a group that sought to arbitrarily destroy all tomes that they judged or deemed to be meaningless, and lived in constant pursuit of the quote, crimson hexagon, unquote, a special room they believed to exist which contained books of smaller format, that were all-powerful, contained illustrations, and possessed magical properties. Other librarians detested the Purifiers because of their destructive dispositions. They argued that books which came across to them as random may in fact contain some hidden significance, if only they had the cipher or the knowledge to understand it. For example, what use would a book written in Dutch be to an Icelandic native who had never read or mustered a word of it their entire life? To them, it would be as useless as a tome of gibberish, and yet a Dutch native would make sense of every page. So, who were these men to decide what was and what was not nonsense, based on their punitive, narrow-minded human understanding? They were unfit judges, incapable of distinguishing what was and what was not of use. Other librarians also took offense to their maiming of this grandiose, almost divine labyrinth. There was beauty in its totality and intrigue in its seemingly random permutations, and they took outrage at the fact that this magnificent artifact was being perpetually defiled. To conclude, the librarians all, in one form or another, sought desperately and futilely for significance, wherever they could imagine it. For, to find meaning amongst the pages, would in turn grant meaning to the librarians' existences, who during the events of the story, all wander aimlessly in suicidal despair, chasing endlessly after one rumor or another, But that is quite enough on the topic of tall tales. What I truly wanted to discuss today was morbid reality. What if I told you that the Library of Babel was real, that you could spend the rest of your days there, perusing its walls, feverishly scanning its countless pages for meaning? Well, it is, sort of. And you can. Though, mercifully, you won't be condemned to its walls. Introducing libraryofbabel.info, a website launched by author and coder Jonathan Basile in 2015, and it is what you imagine, a fully comprehensive digital incarnation of the Library of Babel. It even has a search function to pin down the location of some of the more interesting and meaningful tomes in the library. No need for all time. Here is a short excerpt extracted from the About page of the website. The Library of Babel is a place for scholars to do research, for artists and writers to seek inspiration, for anyone with curiosity or a sense of humor to reflect on the weirdness of existence. In short, it's just like any other library. If completed, it would contain every possible combination of 1,312,000 characters, including lowercase letters, space, comma, and period. Thus, it would contain every book that ever has been written, and every book that ever could be, including every play, every song, every scientific paper, every legal decision, every constitution, every piece of scripture, and so on. At present it contains all possible pages of 3,200 characters, about 10 to the 4,677th power books. Now, let me arouse and provoke some thought as to highlight some of the other interesting actualities that lay rest there. Your entire fate, past and future, is written there, somewhere. It is written in the most elegant of fashions, and in crude and barely coherent ravings, and every variation in between. What would have come of your life, if your path had forked a little differently, oh so long ago? What will be left of it after the decisions of tomorrow, or today, for that matter? How did you fare in each of the infinite scopes of reality? It has all been foretold. It is all already written. All you have to do is find it, and then identify it as prophecy. Yes, it's all there, tauntingly and eternally out of reach. Will you become a success? Was there a road that could have taken you there? Will you ever find happiness? If you have it now, will you always and forever? What perils lay hiding in the shadows of your path?
How will you die?
Maybe you'll drift peacefully away one night at the ripe old age of 82, having lived long and fruitfully, leaving behind a legacy of admirable work and a long line of respectable descendants. Maybe, one night in the distant or not so distant future, against the radiance of a full moon, under cover of an otherwise ordinary cold black night, a man wanders aimlessly and inadvertently along your way, the spasms and twitchings of his brain as uncontrollable and inescapable as your destiny. He walks up and down, and up and down, sweating profusely all the while, unresolved in his purpose, hesitant, but not for much longer, his brain ticking, like a bomb. Who is this man? What happenings have brought him to be here now? What dark intentions dwell in the depths of his heart? Maybe you accomplished nothing, and have no one. Maybe he has come for you, through no other medium than sheer chance, the unfortunate recipient of the grand prize of a twisted lottery. Maybe you'll awake one night to find him standing over your bedside, a blunt axe raised above a pair of piercing, raving eyes. Your final parting memory, 4. Just like the tomes of the Library of Babel, not everything can have meaning. According to a Google search, the most common male forename of the past century is James, and the most common surname of the same period, Smith. Let us take this random narrative that I have written up and see on which shelf it resides. James Smith awoke abruptly, drenched in sweat, at 3:33 a.m. on the cold, clear morning of November 23, 2024. He had been in the midst of a tormenting nightmare, the details of which he could not recall. He scarcely had time to register a thought, for he was met by a hooded, dark and brooding figure hovering over his bedside. All he had time to process in his last few terrifying seconds of existence was that it appeared the silhouette was holding an object above his head in a striking position. The thought occurred to him that he was still dreaming, and then, almost immediately, he realized he was not. His mouth twitched agonizingly in an attempt to cry out, but his effort was cut short by the driving down of what would turn out to be an axe. In vain, he raised his arms in an effort to defend himself. The hooded man rained fury down upon him, hacking over and over and over until naught was left but a gathering of organs, bones, and blood. What did remain of his rotting corpse was only discovered on December 8, 2024, after his landlady had failed to receive payment for rent on the 1st, and after multiple unsuccessful attempts to contact James over the course of a week. Though 2 separate police reports were filed by neighbors regarding a suspicious hooded figure loitering aimlessly in the vicinity late the morning of, the descriptions were unavailing at best, and being the only lead local authorities had to go on, James Smith's killer was never caught. And, wouldn't you know, there it is, where it has always been, where it will remain eternal, on page 301, in volume 7, on the first shelf of the 4th wall, in a hexagon whose key is too long to relay here. In the video description, perhaps. And this is just an exact match, meaning this page happens to contain my exact text, and consists of nothing else other than spaces. Indeed, this text appears in the library a countless number of times, surrounded by every ordering of gibberish imaginable. And, voila! I have just crafted someone's fate. Though, I suppose, it had been crafted already. This destiny awaits some unfortunate soul. No, maybe not you. Maybe not even anyone who exists in this reality. But, if you believe in multiverse theory, or in other words, the totality of everything, then it is certainly true for an infinite number of James Smiths in an infinite number of alternate realities. For, what is reality, after all, if not but a never-ending labyrinth of forking paths? There, James Smith's body lies disfigured and dismembered, stinking and festering, waiting for his luckless old landlady to discover the grisly crimson-strewn scene. And therein lies your fate, too, in the all-encompassing library, however grim, however mundane. And in an infinite number of realities, someone has just arbitrarily scribbled off your fate off of the top of their head, just to make a point in a YouTube video about the totality of the Library of Babel. And to them, you are as imaginary as Mr. James Smith is to me. But, I assure you, it is very much real for someone.